afternoon, dear audience. Today we're going to talk about a polemic topic that is if globalization is or not in retreat. We're going to touch this topic from 5 different perspectives: economical, political, environmental, cultural, and technological. Well, our expert Ahmad will start with his perspective.
Okay, thank you, Paula. So I'm going to talk about globalization, seen from the cultural part. Uh, I honestly think that globalization is not in retreat because culture in many countries and continents all around the world has been changed and affected by globalization. For example, a big example, only in the United States, more than 60,000 Mexican food restaurants have opened since 2014, and this represents 8% of United States restaurant landscape. Only Mexican food, and we could all say that food is a very important element of culture. Also, in Spain, 22% of employment comes from immigrants. There's obviously a flux of different cultures and people that kind of uh, have an impact in other countries. Also, another example would be new elements of culture that has been created from two different countries, such as dances, new slang, or different type of cuisine.
Okay, thank you. Now we can continue with our expert Diego.
Okay. I don't think globalization is in retreat, seeing it from the technology perspective. It is the opposite. Technology is one of the best tools humans have to communicate and continue developing and growing their economy. Why? The movement of data is already surpassing traditional and physical trade as connective tissue in the global economy. Why? Uh, Online stores and online services are getting all the attention of all of the giant multinationals because it is the new way they have to trade and communicate with their people. Half of the trade in global services now depend on digital technology one way or another. Because companies such as Amazon or AliExpress could track their products and services from all around the world, and these companies are taking advantage of digital platforms, creating a giant market and helping the small companies grow because they are using the integrated markets that companies like Facebook, Amazon, and Alibaba, among others, have and implement. So having this in mind, no, globalization isn't in retreat. In fact, it is going digital.
Okay, thank you. Now we can continue with our expert Valeria with her perspective.
Thank you, Paola. I disagree with my partners because I think that indeed globalization is in retreat, and I will share my perspective to you. My perspective is the environmental one. So, globalization is in retreat, but it doesn't mean like it will go to an end. It's more like it is entering to a new phase, and it is going to have several changes in different perspectives, as you already said. So you see, in this era, the world is changing, so as the industries. These ones are boosting innovation and productivity. But how are these industries currently doing that? Okay, the release of the trade, the reduction of the restrictions and rates, among other barriers for free trade, produce an effect in the composition of the industries. So, if this release increases the manufacturing sector, the consequences could be more pollution and more pressure over the natural resources. So, just to make this point short, if a company decides to put a product on the market at an accessible price with a good service, the customer is likely to buy it. But what the customer doesn't know is all of the manufacturing process behind that product. The production, the use of the machinery, the transport, and even the own consumerism of the customer with the product only becomes into contamination and causes a major use of fuels. So what I propose is a solution. It is the fact that it's no longer possible to reduce the damages we have caused to the earth, but what we can do is to prevent disasters from happening in the future. So companies should use clean energies such as solar, wind, geothermal, and all of that clean energies. This will not only have a social impact, but it will also have an environmental benefit.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to hear our expert Ainhoa with her perspective.
Everybody around the globe is questioning globalization, but from the economic perspective, globalization is not in retreat. The first reason is because, the threats that used to hold the global economy are frying, but the cross-border financial flows from the equities, international lending, and foreign direct investors go down, but trade services has increased. And we can see it in a study made by McKinsey Global Institute that shows that thanks to a cross-border flow of goods and services, the GDP is more than 10% higher than it would be if there hasn't been any globalization. And finally, half of all global trades depending on digital technology have grown, and with a research made by Ali Research and the firm Accounture project, by 2020 the cross-border e-commerce will be reaching a total annual sale of $1 trillion, and the next 10 years half of global GDP will be coming from the developing countries.
Thank you. Now, as we have seen, we are discussing a really controversial topic, and now seeing this from the political perspective, globalization actually helps to making strong relationships between the countries. But as we know, lately Trump has been ending with international deals such as the Paris Agreement, which involves the environment. So this is something that have caused a lot of noise in all the world. The USA also abandoned the ONU because they were arguing that it was impartially and it was not making Israel responsible for not being respecting human rights. United States have also get out from nuclear agreement, which is something that scares the opposing countries. Now, seen from other perspective, the Brexit is something that not all of us were waiting, and the problem, among others, is that people who was working in England now will be illegal. So what happens if they have done their life there and everything they care about and they can live with is in there? So now anyone has anything to add? Well, I agree with the part of the environmental perspective, because most of the consumers including me, are not really aware of what we're really buying. We just see that something is has a low price and we buy it, but we don't actually start thinking about the repercussion it can have in the environment. So I think that could be another solution, to put some campaigns to make more conscious the pollution in the world.
Yeah, as I said earlier, the world is changing. This is a whole new era, and I think that people have to adapt. They have to adapt to the technology, they have to adapt to the political, social, cultural perspectives, and it is important for us to be like more aware of what is going on in the world, so that the globalization could be more effective.
Well, I think that when this new era or phase of globalization occurs, more likely like in, I don't know, 10 years, there will also there will also be created new ways of lifestyle where they are adapted to these new necessities of globalization, like from the technology perspective, a new era of children that have the necessity of communicate in a faster way than we used to do or our fathers used to do. And there also will be like a more conscious type of people and employees and social leaders and social workers that will kind of adapt to the necessity of start polluting less and create better products with cheaper prices.
I also agree with the statement of that from the environmental perspective. Yeah, globalization could be in retreat, but there's also the technology part, in which everything is growing so fast that maybe in the future the problem of the environmental retreat could be in some way solved by the technology.
Okay, well, I agree with Ahmad in the part that it is a new era, but the new era has started almost since 2006, that were the boom of all the companies and the movements all around the world. It could be technological and cultural, and we have to adapt. We have to create new habits, and yeah, the main issue human has is the way they communicate.
Well, I would like to add that, as we know, United States and China does not have really good relationships. They try to because they have to, but they are not really like happy with each other. So the USA is increasing the tariffs in commerce. So that they are trying to make more successful their national companies, which is their intention, in my opinion, is good. But I think that this will affect also to the industries or companies that needs to export their products. So I think that we have to, in general, find a balance among all the things.
And I also would like to add that the globalization is changing since the beginning, because always companies are searching for places and cities where they can put their factories with having the cheaper handmade. And it's like globalization is not just changing right now, it has changed since the beginning.
Well, now I would like to all of our experts to add a little conclusion, just to make clear their point if they think globalization is in retreat or not, and what can be done from their perspective. Would someone like to start?
Me. So, as I said, in my opinion, globalization is not in retreat. Instead, it's suffering or getting into a new phase where there will be a lot of changes, new lifestyles will be uh, adapted, and what I think it should happen in order to have a successful era is that we find balance between these five perspectives and find a way to get together all these elements in a way that companies get to succeed, but human rights, human necessities, and human value is respected.
Thank you. Now,
Okay, well, seeing from the technology perspective, yeah, globalization is not in retreat. In fact, it is going digital, so the only thing we have to do is to adapt. We could not refuse to change. It will only make it worse and a bigger problem.
Well, I think, well, as I said at the beginning, I said that globalization is in retreat, but I think that the key here is like to adapt, as my partner said. Globalization could not be in retreat if we find new ways to, for example, reduce the pollution or reduce the contamination from my perspective. If we find these ways and we put them in practice, globalization could not be in retreat. So it is up to us if we want to make a change, like in this whole new era.
And well, from the economic perspective, yeah, globalization is not in retreat, but we agree that from some other perspectives, it's in retreat, but it can be solved if we found a solution.
thank you. Finally, from the political perspective, I think that it is not completely possible to for globalization to end because it's something that we need and we are, like it or not, we are already used to it. So I think that it would be a good idea to be more comprehensive and empathic between all the countries. That way we will understand more about their culture, their environmental, political, economical, and technological situation, so we can help each other and make more trade. I agree with Diego because I think that we have to adapt to all the changes because, as we know, the ones who adapt are the ones who stay more time and survive with the best quality of life. Well, I would like to thank all our experts for sharing their points of view, and well, we have ended. Thank you.